Salutations to Lord Ganesha as we begin this particular topic, the concept of Ganesha. We can begin, however, with the student's prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Mastuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May our study be full of vigor and strength. May we study with great illumination when we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. And peace, peace, peace be unto all. So today's talk is on the concept of Ganesha. One question that always arises, how can we represent a supreme principle that is way beyond all our concepts, that is beyond our ideas of individual space or divided space and a moving kind of conveyor belt of events called time? And how can we bring this entity into our range with great meaning? There are many religious concepts that say that we can put attributes and qualities to that supreme entity, such as omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, all beneficent, all merciful, all loving, without actually giving that entity any kind of form. But as soon as we say the word God or supreme principle, or even the all merciful, some concept has to come in the mind. It is the human way of dealing with things that we are familiar with. And so in Hinduism, there was a wide range of iconography that can take place, constructing a form that is meaningful at great breadth. That means that we have a great selectivity available to us. We can conceive of that entity in any meaningful way. We don't have to accept anything in particular. But one thing that we can say during this period of Ganesh Chaturthi onwards, some 10 days of celebrations amongst the Hindu community, is that the form and personality, if you will, of Lord Ganesha is very pleasing. It didn't always used to be like that, but right now it is one of the most popular forms of God, developing from a relatively minor deity into a full-blown sect. So at the time of Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, let's say in about the 8th century, he identified 5 particular sects. And one of them was the sect of Ganapati. Certainly, by the 5th century, it was a well-established understanding or form or sect or way of worshipping of this entity that is beyond all our forms and concepts. So what endears this entity to us? Of course, if we go back to the Rig Veda mantras, Gananam, Ganapatim, Havamahi, and Vishu Siddha Ganapati, it is quite clear that Ganapati as a concept was there in the earliest texts. Ganapati we worship today are strangers to those Vedic concepts. And yet the whole foundation of the concepts are there because the Rig Vedic deity was a mixture of Ganapati, Brahaspati, that is, Brahaspati and Vachaspati, seen as emanating like a vast burst of light. Brahaspati, the guru of the deities. And we can visualize it in a kind of sun form, and also connected with the Marutis, those who are able to place or remove obstacles from us. So another class of Vedic deities were these Maruts, or the Marut Gana. And Gana, of course, means a group. Now, the group can be as large or small as you please, but this Ganesha, the Lord of the groups, the Lord of beings, can be put in philosophy as the Lord of all beings. And let us see how this can develop. Now, of course, the stories about Ganesha are popularized, but the most popular story about Ganesha's origin will be that Parvati, desiring a child, scraped off the scurf from her own skin and created a form, a child. There are many, many stories about the origin of Ganesha, but this is one, and this is the most popular one. And she was taking her bath doing this, and she decided that this young boy could stand guard. In other words, he could remove any obstacle, act like a gateway. You can either bring in or prevent, but her instruction is quite clear. Nobody should come while I'm taking my bath. Absolutely nobody. Now, of course, the Lord Shiva himself comes along. Of course, by the way, a preceding story will tell us that Shiva did not want a child. He didn't want to live the life of a householder because he is Yogeshwara. He is the Lord of the yogis. And so very ascetic in his nature. So this child is created and stands guard, and Shiva comes along, and this small child blocks him. And then there's nothing much he can do about it. He gets frustrated. In anger, he chops the head off the child. In other words, he removes the obstacle to Parvati, who is there, the mother of Ganesha, and Parvati is there acting as the whole of nature. She is Paramam Prakriti, that is supreme nature. And Shiva, if you take it like this, represents this Parama Purusha, that is a supreme person. In philosophical speak, Shiva represents Brahman and Parvati represents Prakriti. So we can see by removing the access to nature, what is it that stops this union, as it were, in yogic terminology, between this supreme Shiva and Shakti? They are already united, of course, that much we know. But what prevents the perception of this? And we know that this Parvati is made from these three gunas. Prakriti is made from three things because no creation occurs only with one of them. All three are necessary for creation. But of course, Shiva sends his bull, Nanda, to go and look for a suitable head. Nothing can be taken or chosen except the head of Airavata, that is the elephant of Indra, Indra's vehicle. Indra used to be the chief of all the deities, and Indra represents, of course, the head of all the Indriyas, the senses. And so he takes this elephant head, but the elephant head, proportionately bigger than the human body, represents the whole of the cosmos. It represents the macrocosm, and the human body represents the microcosm. And this has been carefully crafted in the depths of meditation. It is a curiosity to non-Hindus to see this Ganesha, and a wonder which says, what a curious thing. And so we see irreverently it is placed on cushions and t-shirts and all kinds of things. And of course, the mild-mannered Hindus don't say a word about it. If it had been some other religion, there would have been a big political crisis, It would be politically incorrect. And political correctness is one of the great refinements of this age, for good or bad. And so I think we have to find out what are the details of this concept to make it meaningful for us. And how can it form for us a good gateway a gateway to everything, a gateway to material prosperity, a gateway to emotional stability, and a gateway to spiritual realization. So all of the chosen ideals, all of the various forms, that is, bringing the Supreme down to within the scope of our understanding, act as kind of gateways. I often think you can have it like this. Supposing there's a wall with a gate or a door, and on the one side is a garden, beautiful garden, a kind of paradise, representing infinite joy and bliss. And then the only clue we have is a small keyhole, a small form. And when we look through it, there we can see with the eye, we can see the glory of the garden beyond. And that also keyhole has the capacity for us to insert a key, unlock it, and remove this obstacle, which is a door. All spiritual life is not a struggle uphill. It's not a struggle against unfair odds. It's a question of removing obstacles. The human body is not an obstacle. The life around us is not really an obstacle in the sense that it is something that we can learn to acknowledge and then strategize and get around it using the full capacity of divine grace. And for this reason, Ganesha is also Vigneshwara, that is, the one who removes all obstacles. The one who removes all obstacles for us means that we cannot do any endeavor or say any prayer without first acknowledging, Lord, please remove these obstacles. In all puja, we ask this, please remove the obstacles for this. In all endeavors towards success, we engage the services of Ganesha, please remove these obstacles. And in spiritual life also, we have to acknowledge that systematically, step by step, we have to first acknowledge the obstacles and have them removed. The primary obstacles in our way, in yogic terminology, are called kleshas. Klesha, obstacles. So they all come from one standard mother of all obstacles, that is namely ignorance itself, avidya. And ignorance also has been commensurate and also systematically, alternatively used for nature itself. Nature, maya, ignorance, all of these are interchangeable terms. But this nature, which we can consider in a feminine form as Mother Nature, has two aspects to it. It has a freeing, liberating aspect, and it has a binding aspect. And so it has both avidya in it and vidya. Vidya maya, avidya maya. And we want to engage with vidya maya. Systematically, step by step, we can do it. So this story tells us something, because the story, the origin of Ganesha, says that we can take the scurf, the skin, that represents nature or represents these three creative forces. This scurf that can remove all the impure substances that we have. Nature is impure, and we can use this impurity to shape this Ganapati, this remover of obstacles, not by running away from nature, but by purifying it. That's the ideal meaning, and it all comes from the mother. So let us examine not only the iconography of Ganesha and find out its deep meaning, but let us also find out all the items that are being held and used in the iconography. One thing about elephants, be they African elephants or Indian elephants, is they have wonderful eyes. I don't know if you ever noticed the beautiful, beautiful eye of an elephant. The eye expresses a high degree of intelligence. The elephant is very much like humans. We know that in Africa, the elephants, they mourn over dead elephants. And they have elephant graveyards. And you can see the great empathy amongst herds of elephants, certainly in Africa, and I'm sure everywhere else, making them very human. We can tame elephants, of course, and make them very human. And they have great feelings. And the elephant, therefore, is certainly regarded in a sacred way in Indian temples. In Indian temples, particularly in South India, you will find there are memorials to temple elephants that have passed away. Small plaques even. In Trichy, in Kerala, in South India, the Malabar coast, there are annual festivals. 15 grand elephants assembled outside the two major, largest temples in Trichy, with great trumpets and drums and gold-plated ornamentation. A great, great whole day and night celebration where these two armies, if you will, of 15 glorious elephants, all arrayed, progress toward each other, along with drums, along with systematic marching music. And at certain moments, the people on the top of the elephants will stand up and they will wave fans. And these are all accompanying the deity of the particular temple, moving progressively toward one, toward the other, exchanging places. And the night celebration is all festivals, fireworks, loud bangs and noises and celebration. And the elephants are used to it. They don't get scared. In the ancient days of warfare, the elephant car would be the ancient tank of the day. And when gunpowder was introduced in warfare, unfortunately, the elephant corps fell. They were attacked violently with the cannons. And one of the reasons why invading armies managed to conquer the defending armies in a region. The word Ganesha is very, very symbolic because Gana means a category, as I've already mentioned. It represents being, all beings, all of creation. Having said that, the elephant head represents the macrocosm and the human body, the microcosm. It is the goal of life that the microcosm merges with the macrocosm. In other words, the individual merges with the cosmic. This is the yogic way of describing things, assuming some kind of separation. The goal should be a unity of existence. And so this is what it represents, and it represents the divine grace that moves us in this direction. The word for elephant in Sanskrit is Gajja. So we can see the combination of words here, but Gajja has a much deeper meaning because you can separate it into two sound symbols, Ga and Ja. And Ga will be short for Gati, which means goal. And Ja will be short for Janma, birth or origin. What is our goal? To get back to our origin. And so this is one of the symbolic origins of this Ganesha. And therefore, when we look at Ganesha and sit before Ganesha and wonder, why is it that you got an elephant head? Of course, the mythology will provide the reason, but the real reason, the real symbolism of it. Let's take, for example, the ears. The ears have a fanning effect. Why are the ears of the elephant so large? And in Africa, the ears are much larger. So we take the African elephant as the example. Without the ears, the elephant will suffer from dehydration. The temperature is so hot, it is only the flapping of the elephant's ears that cools the entire body down, acting like a kind of compressor or a kind of cooling system for the whole elephant, a ventilation system. So that's the ears represent the Lord listening to our prayers. And by virtue of the ears flapping, has a capacity really, like winnowing corn, to select the real prayers of the genuine supplicants and convey them or convey the results of them in a meaningful way. Not all of our wishes are good for us. The tusks. Ganesha, an elephant has two healthy big tusks, which are very dangerous. They're the one weapon that the elephant has. But Ganesha has half a tusk on the one side and a full tusk on the other, representing the whole one truth on the one side and the broken imperfection of nature on the other. And of course, our mythology would tell us that the one tusk was used by Ganesha to write the whole of the Mahabharata. So it represents these two aspects of nature, and as any elephant of the ancient days, acting like earth-moving equipment, can remove any obstacle. Naturally, this entity can remove all of our obstacles. The trunk is bent. You could have a trunk straight, but all the iconography gives the trunk bent, either to one side or the other, replicating the curve of the Devanagari script Om. And even when we look at the script of Om, a combination of Om combined with the letters, then we can easily see, when we see the profile of Ganesha, a pot belly representing prosperity on the one side, representing the possibility also of lust and greed, but also the possibility of prosperity and bliss. And we can easily see the curve of the trunk. We can easily see the curve of the tusk. We can easily see half an eye, an ear. The belly itself represents all the created worlds within him. And then, of course, the Puranas will tell us about the rewards that were made to compensate for the elephant head of two queens, Siti and Riti. Siti represents success. Riti represents prosperity. And these are kinds of tests. If you want these, then you won't get moksha. And so this is putting an obstacle in your way. But if you manage to bypass these two temptations of success and prosperity, which are egocentrically based, we add that provision, then we go on toward the goal of our life, which is moksha, freedom from difficulties, constrictions, and pain. The Lord holds a pasha, a noose in his hand that represents for us raga or attachment. A noose can be used as something like a lasso that the cowboys use. It can be there to catch us and bind our legs and draw us in. But then, of course, when we understand it and when we escape this attachment, when we actually rechannel our attachment and channel it toward the divine, it becomes a freeing thing for us. We're able to catch God if we are able to have the understanding of the skill of doing it. And then there's the ankusha, that is the goad. Elephant trainers have a curious kind of thing with a hook and a sharp end to prod the elephant and also to bring the elephant back, guide the elephant, used with a chain normally. So this represents anger. It's amazing how many people feel prickly and get pricked by life's adversities and vicissitudes. But the Lord Ganesha holds this firmly and says, will you take this energy called anger? Will you hook God into it? Will you get frustrated, as much frustrated with not having a vision of God as you are with the world itself? So all of these symbols and instruments have double meanings. Can you use this ankusha, this goad, to surrender? Will you allow yourself to be hooked and surrender, or will you be trapped? And of course, we would dearly love the bulky Ganesha to be riding on something substantial. See, all the deities have, as Vahini, have this vehicle. Because, you see, for this world to be created, a vehicle has to be used. The initial vehicle of creation is Vak, the word. That's the vehicle. And so, all the deities, even if we take the Trinity, Hindu Trinity that is there, representing creation, representing penetration and sustentation, and representing dissolution, representing as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But all of these will have to have vehicles, because there's no direct agency in Brahman. Brahman doesn't do anything, but Brahman has a presence that enables and manifests agency. And comically, we see Ganesha's agency to be a mouse. Sometimes you say a rat, but let's say a mouse, because it's much more humorous to have a mouse. Because the mouse is stealthy. And we know that mice can destroy whole crops if we're not careful. Temptations, doubts, and fears creep up on us by stealth. We can be in an unaware moment, and before we know it, the mind is saturated in some deviating or diverse interests which take us away from the glory of the divine. The Sanskrit musaka comes from mus, to steal. And so we would like this mouse, this stealthy entity, to be interpreted as the heart that gets pulled. It can be pulled toward worldliness and egocentricity, or it can be pulled toward God. In any event, Ganesha is in control of it, on top of it. And then we have Ganesha, as I say, as Vigneshwara. We know that. We have Shremamsi, Bahu Vijnani, innumerable obstacles before us. Life is not supposed to be smooth, but we are equipped with all the manner of means to remove the obstacles. And in removing the obstacles, the glory, divine glory, flows through. We don't have to struggle against it. We don't have to increase our tapasya if we are devotees. We simply have to remove the obstacles. Now, Patanjali Yoga Sutras gives us 5 obstacles, but the mother of all the obstacles, as I mentioned, is this ignorance, this wrong interpretation. We have made a mistake about this world and this universe. And we know from various examples that this represents an apparitional causation, such as a snake, a rope, and so on, a man versus a tree stump, or mother of pearl appearing as silver. These 3 great examples are there in the Vedanta philosophy. So this is the greatest obstacle, is we have made a mistaken understanding and interpretation of what is there. And then the second obstacle will be the assumption that I am my own person, this individuality. Today we see that even in the context of the COVID virus, people are asserting, I have the right not to be vaccinated. I have the right to be an individual. It is said that Western culture emphasizes individuality, the individual freedom, whereas Oriental society emphasizes community, sociology in that sense, community interests, as opposed to individual interests. And both are important, of course, but to overemphasize anything is not good and serves as an obstacle. This is the reason why we introduce the whole subject of Vedanta and Sankhya psychology through the Enneagram, which is a personality development workshop, because the ego that we have is not a standard ego. It's a combination of inherited something, an inherited tendency, driven by desire, and nurtured then by our response to all those who operated a commanding presence, mother, father, parents, everyone who was much bigger than us when we were very small. And we then cultivate a strategic survival mechanism whereby we can overcome all the unfair odds. And this becomes a cornerstone of a personality that we call aham, I, me. And self-interest reigns. It is extremely dangerous because the self-image that results from it, we register as the best thing that ever happened to us. It is who we are. And so this is the second great obstacle. This selfishness that comes from egocentricity and wrong identification of myself with body and mind. This is mistake number 2, derived, of course, from the first grand mistake. It is like a wave declaring its independence and fighting and trying to deal with all the other waves in the ocean, not realizing that it is the ocean itself. And then the third obstacle will be attachment. Attachment that is based on a push-pull system moving toward pleasure, away from pain. So attraction and repulsion. And then we have finally clinging to life. We can see it in the context of the COVID virus. Somebody remarked to me at lunchtime, one thing that this COVID virus has done for us, it has made us much more aware of death and therefore driven us more towards spirituality. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, because the isolation that COVID has brought upon us, and the restrictions, has made us much more isolated, no doubt. But how will we use the moments of isolation? I had a conference with one devotee today, and they said, you see, with the isolation, it has given me much more time on my hands, and that means I spend much more time on YouTube, listening to all kinds of conspiracy theories that has led me to doubt severely the efficacy of the vaccination. Should I take it? Should I not take it? And as a result, I had a fallout with my family. Now, how to adhere to my own convictions about the vaccine, and at the same time pacify my family who think I am completely unfeeling and unselfish. So, of course, every person must make their own decision based on it, but this COVID virus leading us to increased entertainment or increased occupation of the mind that has no use in this quest for our freedom. That's on the one side. On the other side, it could be an opportunity for great self-reflection, for great introverted analysis, for wonderful prayer, meditation, japa, for spiritual practice. After all, spiritual practice at its most intense will have to be by withdrawing for meditation purposes. For at least from time to time, going into solitude. Solitude means silence also. It's not that there's absence of people. It means that there is an absence of a distraction and an increase in intensification of the interior life. And so we can see that every distraction acts as a delaying tactic for our central purpose, our central goal. That is part of this word that is a combination of this gaja, that is this gata, and this, or gati, and this nya, this thing that represents origin, life, birth, etc. So when we look at this form of Ganesha, we can see all of these various implications of the Supreme. In short, Ganesha will represent the whole of Brahman. It represents the cosmic mind itself, because it is only the cosmic mind that can remove these obstacles. And it is very clear from the Upanishads what is the methodology. We have to make a reversal of the creation. If we can view creation as a kind of manifesting evolution, then what we have to do in our spiritual endeavor is remove the obstacles and go into a process of devolution, devolving, going back to the origin, step by step. We can do it by taking each one of the kleshas. Let us take this clinging to life. Clinging to life has been the emphasis in this COVID virus. Save a life at all costs. Well, you may save a life for the time being, but sooner or later, physical life will disappear. It's an inevitability. And the sooner we come to terms with it, the better. Much better to prepare for a good ending. Not just a good ending, but a good fill-in. What will we do with all the precious days and hours and minutes and seconds available to us, with the beautifully supplied medium of time? Time is a wonderful series of opportunities, blank checks that we can fill in. If we can fill them in wisely and build up an internal bank balance, whereby we feel that we are saturated with this ever-flowing glory and ever-flowing grace that sits behind us all, flowing forward in us and through everything. Being tuned into that will be the means for our freedom, for our moksha. So by revaluing what is birth and life and death and seeing it in its true perspective, acknowledging the inevitability of it, we can then look and see how the whole of nature is this round of birth, life and death, continuing in a cyclical way. It doesn't end. And to say that this body will at some time serve its purpose and go means I can't be attached to it. One easy way of detaching from the body is to view it as made from what it's actually made from, food, organic material. Yesterday's soup and bananas and milk comes today as this earth car that we call a body is only made from that material. So beautifully manifested through a series of complex operations. A digestion, something like a manufacturing process where chemicals are introduced called enzymes to digest this food and make it into an electrolytic solution whereby energy is transferred and transmuted. and then spent and replaced. This drama in every cell of the body is a wonder. Very, very complex. We can't duplicate it through artificial intelligence. And so that's one obstacle that is gone. And in getting this obstacle through the power of discernment, discrimination, we can also then find out what should we allow the mind to move toward and what should we draw it away from. This is in the Kathopanishad, as I mentioned on Saturday mornings. This is a way of meeting a crossroads called Shreyas and Prayas. Something that is pleasurable on the one side, physically orientated, or even psychologically orientated, and something that is to do with our own blissful base. Which will we choose? So this is how we deal with the other obstacle. Attachment is a question of revaluing the world through the power of discernment and putting it in its correct context. And if you're a devotee, it's much easier because you'll take all that energy and attach it to the divine, to the beloved. And then we can then see things in its correct perspective through the power of promoting, purifying waves of sattva, which have the effect of neutralizing egocentric waves, selfish waves. And then we are able to see clearly what is the reality, and our ignorance then is removed by itself, like a cloud that moves on, obliterating the vision of the sun, or like a mirror being cleaned so that we can see our face in it, or like a fire that can be seen once the smoke is clear. So these are various scriptural analogies that are used for us to understand this removal of maya or ignorance, or the attaching effects and damaging effects of prakriti. Let us look at some of these other iconic representations that we have. There are, of course, several varieties of Ganapati icons that we can contemplate. And they're available in archaeological sites and monuments and temples. But the fundamentals we have mentioned, then they're always the same. We can gaze into the rather playful eyes of Ganesha. One thing, of course, is that Ganesha is fond of these particular sweets. And this again is a double-edged sword for us, because we can see whether we want to eat from the world or whether we want to taste the full bliss of blissful life that is offered to us. Again, you see the double nature of nature itself. There is one particular, I'll mention a few variations of these icons. One is called Bala Ganapati, and one is called Taruna Ganapati. And they depict, of course, the first one, as the name suggests, a child. And also the other one represents a young man or young person. Vinayaka is shown with 4 arms, holding the broken tusk, the goad, the noose, and also the rosary that tells us the way to remove obstacles is japa. What is japa? It is taking a remover of obstacles in itself, a protecting thought called a mantra, and with great feeling, using it in 2 senses. One sense is throughout the whole day, repeating it. That is an endorsement of the divine presence here and now, a reminder to bring the thought back. Secondly, as a prerequisite to meditation, or as a part of a whole spiritual practice, culminating, as I say, in meditation, where you're inviting the Lord of the universe into the heart. He holds the sweet modaka in his trunk, the modaka, the sweet meat. He may be standing, he may be seated. We have seen both of these, and normally the legs are folded, but with the pot belly, he sometimes has to put the one leg down, as no doubt those who do yoga will understand. Yes, that's how you have to do it. He also can be represented with 5 heads, 10 hands, 3 eyes in each face, and rides on a lion in some cases. In fact, the original iconography did not have him riding on a mouse. That developed later. The attitude of a hero, Vira Vignesha, that exhibits a martial spirit with several weapons held in his 10 hands. And then there are Shakti Ganapati, that is several varieties of which these are described in that body of literature which is called the Tantras. That means he's shown with his Shakti. And the Shakti is variously called Lakshmi or Riddhi or Siti or Pushti and so on. Various epithets are used. And worship, of course, of this aspect is said to confer special powers or grant the desired fruits quickly. And the purport of describing these is to see all the iconography that is being used, even hands and arms and so on, and try to relate to how this entity represents the highest divine principle and how it is an assistance to us in a sense of primarily being a remover of obstacles, and how it represents the cosmic mind. Our personal God is only cosmic mind. It is the cosmic mind that has manifested the entire cosmos, the entire universe. The sound symbol Om represents it. And so at the end of the day, the sound symbol for Ganesha is Om. Om is its representation. It is not only represents the whole manifested universe, but also the causal aspect of it as well, and the capacity to remove obstacles by virtue of it being the Lord of beings. Lord of beings means that he has the capacity to command all the subtle forces of nature that we call tanmatras. In fact, it's the tanmatras that is Shiva's own group, own gana, own bhutas, often called mahabhutas, if you want to put it in that terminology, are all at the command of this Ganesha. After all, Ganesha's father is Shiva, representing that Para Brahman, that supreme principle itself. So these are just some thoughts on Ganesha and how we should take the iconography in a serious way, and how, if we choose, it can lead us in a conceptual way to the highest realizations. So that's all I have to say on the subject, but it is interactive. So I'm going to unplug this microphone so that I can hear any further questions or comments that you may have on this subject. You see, there are many forms of Ganesha, but the forms that we should love the most are those that somehow intrinsically move the heart. See, I've seen some forms of Ganesha. Normally, Ganesha is red in color, by the way. He's one of the rulers. So, and normally speaking, I've seen some forms of Ganesha that are a little surreal, and others that we can see by the shape of the arm and by the look and so on and so forth. They have the capacity to move the heart as well. An association, internal association is made with this. And we have the option, as I say, to view this Ganesha either as a child Ganesha or an adult or a warrior or whatever we like, What are we depending on? We're depending on the full capacity of our own imagination. We have to understand that these forms have come out of the depths of meditation. And while we don't find these forms in the earliest parts of Hinduism, the beauty and the antiquity of Hinduism allows us to develop and absorb all these forms. There is some suggestion among scholars that an elephant-headed god was a tribal god, but was absorbed into mainstream, see. Now, whether that is true or not, we don't know. But the absorbing capacity through antiquity of all these various forms, and to give it as profound inner meaning, so that when we gaze on the form, we can go into a sense of meditation and get back to the original meaning that it has. And therefore, there's value in the conceptual aspect of this. Similarly, somebody may have sat down and, taking some crude forms, thought through the depths of meditation how this form represents and the assemblage of all these concepts and ideas. And when we meditate on the form and go the other way, back to the original purport of the meditation and inspiration of that, makes us have an open gateway, a kind of aperture through which we can gaze at the Supreme. And that then has the capacity to lead us to the highest in a simple step-by-step way, not repressing our imagination, not repressing Maya, but using it. There's a very, very great advantage we have in doing this. In spiritual life, the greatest tool we have is our creative imagination, our capacity to image make, and to do it in a beautiful and aesthetic way, something that is fun and something that is pleasing. So with that, Om Ganeshaya Namaha. May Lord Ganesha bless us all. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.